Hello and welcome back to Continental Club, where we discuss the hottest topics in European football. Pato is at a wedding, so we've recruited Joe over from FD for the day. And today we are talking about the club who have had the most underrated window. Because Tamish Bahal asked what are the transfers which were great business but went under the radar this window. But before we get stuck into that, just a quick reminder to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell to never miss out on a video when we upload it. We do things like this all the time, Stat Wars, much else. But let's get into underrated transfer windows. And we're going to start with a slightly weird shout potentially in PSG, Hamill, because it's been a topsy-turvy window.
It has. The whole Neymar situation rages on, but Joseph has just detailed that over on Football Daily on We Need to Talk, which should have gone live, all being well, 1 hour ago. So go and check that out afterwards if you're interested about Neymar. Let's stick to the players they brought in. So Pablo Sarabia being one for the, a pretty savvy sum of £16.2 million from Sevilla. And we touted him for every top club. So this is a guy who pretty much does everything in the final third. He's been contributing in that sense pretty consistently. So in 16-17, 16 goal contributions in 34 league games. 17-18, slight dip with 11. And 18-19, 25 goal contributions in 33 league games. And we said it'd be a great fit for someone like Chelsea with Eden Hazard departing the club, and they're desperately in need of attacking sort of wide talent that can be tactically versatile all along that front line. But of course they're banned. So Pablo Sarabia subsequently has found himself at PSG. And I think Thomas Tuchel will be delighted with the profile of player that he's starting to bring in. Maybe, the whole Khalifi said that, he doesn't want his players acting like superstars anymore. And maybe as a result of the very public kind of, not spats, but Mbappe saying at the awards ceremony that he's ready for a new role or he'll move on. And Neymar sort of trying to force through a move to Barcelona.
Less egos coming in.
Yeah, I think as a result, maybe they've been a bit more trusting in Tuchel's targets. So they've said, they might have said, listen, go after your profile of player instead of this kind of Galactico 2.0 player. And this is where Pablo Sarabia comes in. So 18-19 per 90 stats, just in case you're interested. 2.5 shots, 2.2 key passes. That's monstrous. That would have put him in the top 10 creators in the Premier League last year. That's 0.3 more than Mesut Ozil. 0.9 dribbles, so not entirely, dribbly. But he's pretty handy. 1.7 tackles and interceptions, so not a huge defensive contribution, but does show you, where he does the most damage. And that is as a 10 or kind of on the right wing. 0.77 expected goals and assists per 90. That is absolutely monstrous. What other players have you come across?
I think sort of Mane's 0.6-ish, Salah about the same as well. So they're, really, up there with the best players in the Premier League.
And we have kind of spoken to that on other episodes. So let's move on to the more interesting transfer in Abdou Diallo from Borussia Dortmund for €31 million. Dortmund have got a decent fee for him, although it kind of now feels they've brought Hummels in and he's had to depart as a result. And I'm not sure if that's wise. That does take the shine off the Hummels deal. Me and Patrick Van Straten strongly disagreed. I thought his experience, would be good, and they could have used someone of his stature in the final third of last season, couldn't they? Maybe to get them over the line. But if it means that Diallo leaves as a result, then it does make it a little bit more questionable bringing him in. Diallo is a former Monaco Academy graduate, made 5 appearances for the club in that league triumph of 16-17 actually, before joining Mainz in July 2017, where he excelled. Long story short, and BVP paid €28 million for him. So they've not made money on him after a great season.
Doesn't make any sense.
Which would suggest, maybe some issues behind the scene. Again, we don't want to guess at that sort of thing because it is lazy. But yeah, it does not make sense unless there's kind of a personal element to it. Of course, they still have Zagadou. They still have
Akanji,
the Swiss international. He played nearly 3,000 minutes, so pretty much a mainstay in that BVB side. 2.4 tackles and interceptions, a 93% success rate on his tackles. So not a huge number, but when he went in for the ball, he got it more often than not. 1.5 dribbles, which is obscene for a centre-back. I think we covered this a little bit on Transfer Review. And Herrera signed too, 29 years old. I mean, he's on an absolute wedge. Huge money. If his agent's watching this, sign me up. 18-19 Frandar, so 1,400 league minutes, 2 goals, 3 assists. a monstrous 6 tackles and interceptions. So if you need someone at the base of midfield, if you don't want to play Marquinhos as a kind of defensively minded number 6 anymore, then Ander Herrera, yeah, absolutely fine to bring in. Particularly if he's going to man mark someone of high pedigree in a Champions League game.
You're hoping so. Like I don't think Tuchel will play him as a DM. He's so rash. Like his positioning is just so poor. And I think part of the reason he has such high tackle interception numbers is because his positioning is just all over the gap. He's just flying out the line, and maybe Tuchel will love that as part of a pressing system. But
so
if you're asking him to be disciplined and just shield a defence, it's not.
So would you use him as something like a Kante last year in Sarri's system at Chelsea, sort of box to box?
That's probably more where he's suited, just because he's so unpredictable in his press, and I don't know whether that's because the pressing system at United was so rubbish and that he was so unstructured he could get away with that, but he can't just sit and kind of shuttle. And I think that's maybe why they've also still been linked with like Weigls and Rafa Guerreiros and stuff like that.
Yeah, if you're going to play a double pivot, I suppose a Weigl in there or someone more, sound of mind.
Maybe it'd be like Verratti and Herrera.
Yeah, Verratti. I suppose in the absence of Rabiot, whose defensive contributions were really solid, bringing Ander Herrera in for free is not the worst. Of course, they're not like for like, and Rabiot is a much more well-rounded player. But they've also got a lot of money in for their peripheral players. And this is what PSG have started to do really well in the last 3 or 4 years. It's become part of their business models, almost Monaco-esque. They've sold Moussa Diaby to Leverkusen for €15 million. Keep your eye on him because he made 8 goal contributions in, I think, 1,100 league minutes. So a very useful player. And Kunku's joined Leipzig for €13 million. And whenever Leipzig are going after a youngster, you're thinking, oh God, they've seen something in him that I've missed. Like, they are very clued on, aren't they? I think 3 goals and 2 assists for him in 1,100 minutes too. And Timo Werner, shout out, man like Timo. He's joined Lille for €10 million. 3 goals in 13 SPFL games for Celtic. And I liked his commitment, I liked his character in a league where, young players, young loanies are traditionally kicked out of. He kind of really stood up to that, and I think that sort of attitude will serve him well.
Sorry, do you think, having seen him in, at Celtic sort of first hand, do you think he's got a future in a top 5 league?
I think Lille's a really good club for him, actually. I think that sort of pedigree of club, I don't think he's ready for a top side. Like I said, his attitude is spot on. It's hard to really surmise, his kind of playing style, having only seen it, very infrequently. He often came off the bench, and then Neil Lennon didn't really favour him. But good little finisher, took up really good positions, and very lively. Like, he was quite dribbly, very proactive in the box. So I think it's probably a decent loan spell for him, but it wasn't like Paddy Roberts where he came and you were like, oh, this guy's technically very, very gifted. But I spoke for quite a while there. It's time to move on to you, Joseph. What are you saying?
I was struggling to find an underrated transfer window. Obviously, not a massive consumer of European football. I was thinking off the top of my head, teams like West Ham. I think West Ham have had probably an underrated window, bringing in Fornals and Seb Haller. But it kind of got me thinking, maybe on like a managerial level, there's an argument to be made. I think purely with the signing of Antonio Conte, Inter Milan become an immediate contender. I think they got the best manager available in world football into the club. I think he's a better manager than Maurizio Sarri, certainly better than Jose Mourinho. People will probably be saying him in the comments as well. So I think he immediately makes them contenders for the Scudetto. Like, I think from a Champions League sort of challenger to a Scudetto challenger in the space of 3 months is obviously a good way to go. Some of their signings have also been pretty clever. Diego Godin, I think it works quite well in Antonio Conte's 3 at the back system. He's going to bring a lot of experience, and I think De Vrij and Skriniar, if they're able to hold on to Skriniar, which it seems like they're going to be able to do, make a pretty mean defence. With Handanovic sat in behind them, they've brought Lazaro in from Hertha Berlin. I think he'll probably play as the right wing back, because obviously he's a right back and a right midfielder. And we kind of see Antonio Conte get the best out of players like Marcos Alonso in that sort of role. So he'll be an exciting prospect. They've got Politano in on a permanent, having spent last season there on loan. Seems like this is the go-to way of signing players for the Milan sides now, because they are strapped for cash. So it seems to be either a 2-year and a 1-year loan with an obligation to buy at the end of it. Which is obviously what they're trying to do with Romelu Lukaku. Man United having absolutely none of it because a £9 million upfront payment is not enough for a player of his calibre. But for Politano, I think that Sassuolo basically are like, yeah, we'll take it. We're going to get the money eventually. 5 goals, 6 assists, obviously, last season. So not the best output, but you're hoping Antonio Conte gets an improvement out of him. Barella as well comes in with an obligation to buy. Another one of these loan moves. £22.5 million that obligation to buy is. 4 tackles and interceptions in central midfield, very strong. I quite like the core of Inter's side, Brozovic and Barella. I wonder if they're going to kind of play in that midfield too. And Conte's going to go for a 3-4-3 because obviously Nainggolan has been effectively kicked out of the club. Beppe Morata saying we don't want him, we don't want Icardi. We're open to offers for both players. So I think that they've laid their cards out very early. They've got some exciting talent in. They've got Antonio Conte, one of the best managers in world football, through the door. And if they can get that deal from Lukaku over the line, it will be an incredible summer. The only difficulty is, what do they do with Icardi and Nainggolan? Because if they can't sell them, and they've publicly come out and said we don't want them, do you get them training with the 23s? Do you send them out on loan? Do you just keep them with the first team squad and let that negative energy kind of thrive? Because if Lukaku comes in, Icardi's not getting a minute, and they're going to have to pay the 80 million that United want. United aren't going to settle. So if Inter can get Lukaku over the line, I think they've had an underrated summer.
Yeah. I'd be surprised if no one went for Icardi, especially as you imagine now they've publicly declared that they don't want him, that price will drop quite dramatically. And if they get rid of Icardi and Nainggolan, you'd expect them to get at least maybe 90 to 100 million euros. I think Icardi would have been over that.
I would take him on loan at Celtic.
Would you?
As an understudy to League.
Okay, I like it.
Well, I think they were hoping that United were going to go, okay, we'll have Icardi as part of the Lukaku transfer. But, I've seen statements from pretty much every major club's chief now saying that I've met with Wandanara and it's not happening.
It's not worth the aggravation,
I think the Napoli chief exec came out and said he had 1 meeting with her and that was enough to never want to meet her again.
Really?
So I think that clubs like Napoli, probably Juventus now, they've being linked with Neymar quite heavily. I just don't think that they're going to go for a player like Icardi with that attitude.
I'm just trying to think of clubs that he could potentially go to, and obviously Atletico Madrid probably will need another striker in a year's time. I know they've signed Morata now permanently. But Diego Costa's not getting any younger. They've obviously lost Griezmann. There's a lot of pressure on João Felix. There's talk about James Rodriguez coming in as well.
The natural destination has always been Juventus, hasn't it? As in, he was the best striker in Serie A. 5 years of consistently hitting around 20 league goals, and it felt like they'd come in for a big bid in the same way they did for Higuain at Napoli. And now, Juve are being linked with Neymar. They've just signed De Ligt. And so it feels like they're spent out and they just wouldn't tolerate someone like that at their club. So Inter in a really weak position with their star asset.
Yeah.
So I still reckon if you're a Real Madrid, it might be worth going in for him.
I just think with the side, I just don't see him fitting. I feel like Zidane has such a positive dressing room and he's kind of got that atmosphere behind the scenes of like we're all pulling in the right direction. I just don't know
Ramos wouldn't tolerate that.
I just don't know whether he want Icardi. I feel like Chelsea probably would have been the right destination for it, given that they don't really have a striker. I mean, Tammy, okay, Mishi, okay, and they obviously didn't take up the option for Gonzalez. So they don't have an out-and-out star name, but they're banned.
But they've had that little kind of period, I feel, where player power was tolerated there, when Abramovich was super invested and, they had his ear effectively, those sort of players, didn't they? And they were probably more responsible than people give them credit for with it. Andres Villas-Boas was a victim of it, but he's not exactly done anything to disprove those players since. Whereas I feel now with Lampard in charge, even if they weren't, they didn't have a transfer ban, they wouldn't bring in a player like that, for fear of kind of rocking the boat with an inexperienced manager. Yes, it's baffling.
What about Tottenham as a backup to Kane?
I just don't think he accepts being a backup, and I don't. Yeah, Spurs have got such a. I mean, it's a similar thing. They've got such a familial atmosphere. There's no star bigger than the team. I just don't think Icardi's the man to put in there. I'm kind of stumped with where he should go, but let us know what you guys think in the comments below. But let's move on to a club that have really got involved with the transfer merry-go-round this summer in Sevilla. They've sold Quincy Promes, he's gone to Ajax. They've obviously lost Sarabia, who was their best player for the last 2 or 3 years, to PSG. And then Luis Muriel has joined Fiorentina, I believe. He was on loan at Fiorentina last year. He's actually gone to Atalanta. So they sold them for a combined close to 50 million euros, and they've reinvested it really interestingly. So the sort of marquee signing is a guy called Jules Koundé, who was at Bordeaux last year. He's a 20-year-old centre-back. They've spent 25 million euros on him.
Wow.
Which is quite a big chunk. But he looked very good last year. I mean, I can't say I've watched a lot of Bordeaux last year, but statistically it looks really good. He played in all but one of their games. Exactly. What was I doing? And they've also signed another centre-back in Diego Carlos, who's coming from Nantes. But then Monchi's made some really interesting signings as well. Attacking-wise, they brought in Munis de Boer from Red Bull Salzburg, who scored 38 and 47 last year under Marco Rose at Salzburg. They've obviously brought in Luc de Jong as well, who's gone to Sevilla, which I didn't realise until yesterday. That transfer just completely passed me by, but he has just been fantastic for PSV for the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Hope that Newcastle form doesn't come back.
Well, that was just a bad 6 months, I think, wasn't it? I think he was only on loan at Newcastle. Yeah, it just didn't work out for him at all. I think Luc de Jong will be a fascinating signing for them, and they've obviously lost Andre Silva, who's gone back to AC Milan, and we're hearing this morning that he's looking like he's now going to Monaco. So they did need to strengthen the forward areas, but they've still got Ben Yedder. There was talks about Man United going in for that. I think that was just paper talk at the time. And then they've obviously signed Lucas Ocampos as well from Marseille. He's sort of a tricky winger. He's about 20, I think he's 25. I think he was putting up about 0.4 expected goals and assists last year. He was about 18.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, all these signings have been sort of 10 to 25.
They just must be gutted that they had the release clause in Sarabia's contract.
Yeah,
like that's so cheap.
That did really let them down. And Chris Hamill's favourite player from last year, Joan Jordan, into central midfield. And then they've obviously got some key players that are already still there. Thomas Vaclik had a very good year. Jesus Navas is still turning up good numbers despite being about 35 now. Simon Kier at the back, Roque Mesa. So they've got quite a good squad, Sevilla. And I think I'd put them as an outside bet for third, potentially. Along with
Valencia. Need a lot of players to gel for that.
They really would.
Is Banega still there?
Benega's still
putting
there.
up like 3 key passes a game at like 33.
Yeah, I think they had a real topsy-turvy season last year. And Valencia have also strengthened quite well with bringing in Maxi Gomez and Jesper Cillessen as well. But I just don't think Atletico Madrid, there's so many players in there, so many big expectations now, and they've lost their best player in Griezmann. I think it's going to be a three-way fight between them, Sevilla and Valencia for third and fourth. Guys, let us know what you guys think about La Liga in the comments down below. And that was our sort of transfer roundup. We'll be moving on to quickfire questions now. First quickfire came in from Blaugrana7754. Thank you very much, Blaugrana7754. They've asked, thoughts on Trippier to Atleti? Weirdest move of the summer. Joe, what are you making of this?
Bizarre. I think Trippier must be absolutely delighted to get a club of that calibre coming in for him. Tottenham were keen to sell, clearly. He was linked to a lot of clubs, wasn't he? And I think they'll be happy to have got, 25 million in the end for him, for a player that was clearly struggling last season. For Atletico, it feels like an odd move to me. I don't see Trippier as an outstanding defender. Okay, there are arguments to be made. He was pretty good in a low block at Burnley before joining Tottenham Hotspur. But I think Trippier is better when he's on the front foot. And at Atletico under Simeone, he's not going to be on the front foot from full-back areas. He's going to be asked to play in a structured back four that is very, very cohesive. And he's not going to be able to make these overlapping runs. He's not going to be able to press forward and whip balls into Morata, in my opinion. I think his weaker attributes might get exposed. However, every defender Simeone gets his hands on looks better as soon as they slot into his system. So the whole thesis that he's a better attacker than he is defender could go out the window tomorrow, and we could be looking at this and going, as a snip at 20 mil.
What do you reckon, Hamel?
I mean, something needed to happen, didn't they? They let go of Arias, Schalke, Johnny Otto. Was Arias even at the club? I'm not sure.
He was.
Juan Fran.
I'm not sure at this point. Juan Fran has always been a solid defender, but his forward contribution has fallen year on year, hasn't it? So something needed to be done, and I think at 20 million is fine for both parties. I don't think it's tremendously weird. It's a little bit left field, but I'm kind of into it. Well, it's not left field, is it? It's literally right field.
Yeah.
But I mean, Kieran Trippier, what else can I say that's not been said? I don't think there's any original insight to be
Yeah.
had here.
I think the more, sorry to interrupt, I think
Go
the
on.
more interesting transfer, you might be able to touch on it a little bit more, like happened yesterday, is Mario Hermoso joining
Yeah.
Atletico.
But the ex-Real Madrid product, I mean, I'm not sure how much it was for. I profiled him quite a while ago now, so my memory's a little bit rusty on him. But he is someone that Real Madrid were keen to bring back. They'll probably be a little bit pissed off losing him to a rival. And since he joined Espanyol, he's been great. His numbers were fantastic last year. And I think, him and Yeri Alvarez are sort of, breaking into the Spain squad now. So, might be their centre-back pairing moving forward. I'm not sure if they pay the same side or whatever. So Hermoso, I think, is a fantastic signing. Kieran Trippier, good. I mean, it does ponder the question, is Simeone contemplating a system change, from that 4-4-2? But, we could hypothesise about a 3-4-3 and say Trippier would fit in well there. And that might be part of his thinking, but chances are he's just going to line up 4-4-2 again.
Yeah, they've also brought in a left-back called Ronan Lodi, I think, from Brazil, who's supposedly quite highly talked about, but let's see how that develops. But I think it's a weird move from Spurs' perspective in that they've now got Serge Aurier, who's never seemed like his face really fits at Spurs, and has been linked with the move for ages, and Kyle Walker-Peters is their only right-back options. So it's a real...
Foyth can play there, can't he?
I think Foyth's going to get a lot of minutes at right back this season.
Do you think? I don't know. He's also... He looks like he's got the great attributes to be, a really solid defender in the future, but I think some of his decision-making, some of his passing as well. Yeah, Foyth has a lot to learn, and so does Walker-Peters as well. I think this is risky from Spurs' perspective.
They must have another right back lined up.
It must be
They
someone
must have somebody that they've spotted on the continent or in South America and thought, yeah, we like a bit of this, because Trippier and Aurier's output is both of them mediocre.
Yeah.
But if you say, to facilitate a deal for another player, if they do end up getting Lo Celso in at the expense of a right back, that's going to be great business. If that pays for, it's paid for half of Ndombele. So from, balancing the books perspectives, if it leads to strengthening in another area and they're not as reliant on the right back position, then fine.
I like it. Good financial management from Hamill. It might not have been the weirdest, but it was definitely the speediest. I swear it got announced on Tuesday and was done by Wednesday. Anyway, let's move on to Wilkes134's question. Would the signing of Dani Ceballos be a good signing for Arsenal as a Ramsey replacement and put them in top 4 contention? Now, Hamill, I know you're a big Ceballos fan.
Yeah, I don't know why you wouldn't be. He's literally proved he can do it all. I think it was... I might be getting my seasons wrong here, either 15-16 or 16-17 at Real Betis. He's putting up huge defensive numbers, huge dribbling numbers, very solid key passes. Then he moved to Real Madrid. He became a little bit more of a final third player. So I think maybe more shots. Again, I might be corrected there. But in the very limited minutes he's been given at Real Madrid, he's been very, very useful and just a victim of probably system, of probably older personnel at the club, still getting a run out. And it makes perfect sense from Real Madrid's perspective as well. He's if they signed Fabian Ruiz, I'd have been really annoyed if I was Ceballos, but I don't think they have. And if they send him out on loan with a view to bringing him back, and having Cruz 1 year older, having Modric 1 year older, I don't know what they're doing about Casemiro. If they're still going to stick with that 4-3-3, I imagine he'll still be in there. He's like 27, right? So yeah, if they say go out for a year, do really well, and then come back into the fray a little bit like they're trying to do with Odegaard, kind of future-proofing the side, then yeah, that's good squad management. But if he goes away, bangs, and then wants to stay there, I imagine Arsenal would have a fee as part of the deal. Although they're in dire straits, so maybe not the strongest bargaining position. But yeah, either way, mate, really, really like it.
Fair. Joe, you confident for Arsenal next year? What are your thoughts on Arsenal now?
I think they're still quite a few players short, aren't they? They're just.
I suppose where do they need him? Where does he fit in?
They're fannying around, quite frankly, at the moment. The Tierney deal should have been done and dusted. I don't know why they aren't just paying the money. Let's just get it done. If you're an Arsenal fan, the Wilf Zaha move continues to puzzle me. I just don't think that they're going to get that over the line, given that we've got 2 weeks left of the transfer window now, and there's been little to no movement in that time. So I think they're struggling, and they clearly need a central midfielder, and Dani Ceballos is one of the best young prospects in world football right now. I think if Dani Ceballos wasn't playing for Madrid would be trying to sign Dani Ceballos. I think that's probably the best compliment you can pay him. And Arsenal should just try and get an option to buy in a similar way that Chelsea did with Mateo Kovacic. They got that deal done, 40 mil. If they can get a 40 mil option in there with Ceballos, I'll be all over that. I just don't think Madrid will do it, and Arsenal will probably be back to the drawing board next season. But it saves them the funds, and they've got all of it.
It all sort of leads back to Real Betis as well. Like their business over the last few years in selling Ceballos, bringing in Fabian Ruiz, then selling him to Napoli, then bringing in Lo Celso, and now it looks like they'll sell Lo Celso and bring in Fekir as well. Like they're managing to upgrade without spending like a fortune.
In central midfield, they are what Atletico used to be up front. Do you remember when Atletico went through sort of like Forlan,
like Aguero,
Falcao, Aguero, Costa, Torres, like that whole like circle jerk? This is the exact same in central midfield. It's unreal.
Yeah,
I'd love to see Fekir go to Betis, just for being a slight fan of Betis. I think it would be such a fun move, basically. Although he could probably do better.
22 million euros apparently.
I know. Why is no one in the Premier League snapping that up? Anyway, that's all we've got time for on Continental Club for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Let us know what you guys thought in the comments down below. As we said earlier, you should go over and check We Need to Talk out on Football Daily. Hamel, anything you'd like to push to?
Awkward FIFA on the squad goals, which obviously used to be FDFC, and now the guys have rebranded it. I'm just not in the know anymore. I have no control over what people do. Bye.
Cheers, guys. See ya.